Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise on the world's biggest issues and give you that clear shortcut to really understanding what's going on. Today, we're diving deep into global pivot points, starting our analysis, actually, with a quick stop in Italy, specifically Tuscany, where this conversation kind of got anchored.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. Sets the scene a bit. The feeling in Italy, well, based on the initial notes we saw, seems maybe cautiously optimistic, especially fiscally.
Optimistic. In Europe right now.
Relatively speaking, yeah. While others are struggling, Italy has apparently managed to cut some income tax rates from 35% down to 32%. That suggests, a bit more stability than you might expect.
Interesting. That definitely stands out. And speaking of Italy, there was this little anecdote that perfectly leads us into our main subject today.
Oh, right, the Meloni and Erdogan interaction.
Exactly. Italy's leader, Giorgia Meloni, apparently got some unsolicited advice from Turkish President Erdogan. Something about being too pretty to smoke.
Yeah, that sounds... Well, it sounds like Erdogan, doesn't it? Bold, maybe a bit paternalistic, very personal.
It really does. And it sets up the figure perfectly. This powerful, sometimes quite aggressive leader who's shaping Turkey's moves on the world stage.
Absolutely. That little story, which came up in the briefing from Tenenbaum, it's like a snapshot of Erdogan's style. So our mission today is really to unpack Turkey.
A country right at the crossroads.
Exactly. Geographically, culturally, ideologically, it sits between everyone. And we're digging into this analysis from Tenenbaum about Turkey's strategic balancing act, how it plays this in-between role.
Okay, so let's set the stage for everyone listening. Why Turkey? Why does it matter so much right now? Why this deep dive?
Well, it's about the scale of their influence, first off. Second biggest army in NATO that gives them huge clout within the West.
Right. Can't ignore that.
But then, under Erdogan, they're constantly looking east, too. They position themselves as this essential go-between in crises, like the Black Sea grain deal or trying to mediate in Gaza recently.
Walking a tightrope.
A very fine one. Between NATO duties and ties with Russia, the Islamic world, it's complex. And then there's the whole question of their democracy, or semi-democracy. Understanding Erdogan's path, the history, it's the only way to grasp why they do what they do.
Okay, let's start with that history then. Because you really can't get modern Turkey without thinking about the Ottoman Empire, right?
Yep.
That massive shadow it casts.
That's the absolute starting point. The Ottomans, they controlled everything. North Africa, the whole Arab world, big chunks of Southeast Europe, Bosnia, Albania, Greece. It was enormous for centuries.
An imperial powerhouse.
Truly. And their big mistake, the fatal one, was backing the wrong side in World War I. Germany and Austria-Hungary.
And losing meant more than just defeat. It meant being carved up.
Totally dismembered. The Treaty of Sèvres in 1920, brutal. The French and British just sliced up those territories, what was left. Just the Anatolian Peninsula, basically modern Turkey.
Imagine that shock, going from this vast empire to just that.
Exactly. That sense of historical loss, the feeling that they were once great and were cut down. That definitely fuels some of Erdogan's ambition today, this sort of neo-Ottoman thinking.
But even losing all that land, the cultural ties, the language, that reach is still there, isn't it?
It is. And this is where Tenenbaum really dug into the Turkic cultural sphere. Think about Central Asia, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Azerbaijan especially. They all speak Turkic-based languages.
Not identical to modern Turkish, but related.
Related, yeah. There's a common root, a shared cultural feeling. And Turkey sees this as a potential sphere of influence, a way to connect.
So it's like a soft power play, a kind of pan-Turkic community they're trying to foster.
That's the idea, sometimes called Turanism, trying to pull those former Soviet republics closer, using culture and language to counter, Russia's historical influence or China's growing weight. It's a vast potential network.
And this cultural connection is overlaid on this unique geography, literally straddling Europe and Asia. That's got to be a huge advantage.
It's the classic image, isn't it? Istanbul, Byzantium, Constantinople, the only big city split between continents like that. You cross a bridge, you're in Asia.
But we should be clear, most of Turkey isn't in Europe.
Oh, not at all. Geographically, it's tiny, like 2.5% maybe. The vast majority, 97.5%, is firmly in Asia Minor. But that little slice of Europe, symbolically, incredibly valuable.
And that symbolism, that duality,
yeah,
that's what they leverage, this in-the-middle thing.
Constantly. It's their diplomatic bread and butter. They're not fully Western. The EU rejected them, remember? But they're not fully Eastern or Middle Eastern either. They occupy this ambiguous space.
Profitable ambiguity.
Very profitable. They can play both sides. Tell NATO, you need us for security, then turn around and tell Russia or Iran, hey, we're not totally in the Western camp. This ability to maneuver to be neither one nor the other, that's central to Tenenbaum's analysis of how they operate so effectively.
Okay, so that strategic spot has been, well, fought over internally since Turkey became a modern state. Back in the 1920s, the founder, Ataturk, he pushed for a really radical, secular Turkey. Lacism, right?
Yeah, revolutionary is the word. And
Yeah.
pretty authoritarian about it, too. Ataturk himself wasn't religious, and he was determined to break from centuries of Ottoman Islamic tradition. He thought secularism was the key to being modern European.
And this wasn't just talk. The state enforced it, didn't it? Like everyday life stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Banning the fez hat,
Oh.
switching the alphabet from Arabic to Latin script, changing the rest day from Friday to Sunday, restrictions on beards for men, headscarves for women in public roles. It was secularism by decree, not really by popular choice.
And the military's role in this was key. They were set up as the guardians of this secularism.
That was their explicit role, yeah, to protect Ataturk's vision. That's why you saw those periodic military coups over the decades whenever they felt politicians were straying too far back towards Islamism.
They were the check and balance.
Exactly. And that system, that tension, kind of held until Erdogan came along. His whole career path, mayor of Istanbul, prime minister, now president, it seems like it's been about systematically undoing that Ataturk revolution.
So how did he manage it? How did he dismantle that structure, especially the military's power?
It was step by step, very calculated. First, reshaping the judiciary, getting loyalists in place, then neutralizing the military. The big moment, the real turning point, was that failed coup attempt about 5 years back.
Ah, yes, that was huge.
Huge. Whether it was entirely genuine or partly convenient for him, it gave him the perfect excuse.
A pretext to purge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands arrested or fired, military, judges, academics, journalists, anyone seen as opposition. It basically wiped out the last major institutional check on his power. After that, he could really accelerate the shift back towards a more openly Islamic identity, rolling back those old secular rules.
Which brings us to today, and this term you hear, semi-democracy. What does that actually mean? It's not a full dictatorship, so why semi?
It means it still has the appearance of democracy. There are elections, multiple parties exist. It's not, North Korea. But the core components of a liberal democracy, a free press, independent courts, a military under civilian rule, not personal rule, those are largely controlled by Erdogan and his circle.
The analysis we looked at, Tenenbaum's work, drew a really interesting parallel here, comparing Erdogan's methods to Chavez in Venezuela or even Xi in China.
It's a very sharp comparison. It's the playbook of the modern autocrat, isn't it? Using the mechanisms of the state, especially the legal system, rather than just brute force, to sideline opponents while keeping up a democratic front.
And the key tactic seems to be these anti-corruption drives.
Weaponized anti-corruption, yeah.
Right.
Look at the current mayor of Istanbul. He's seen as the biggest threat to Erdogan in the future. So what happens? The state launches these massive corruption investigations against him.
Convenient timing.
Very. Arrests happen, key figures get tied up in legal battles, often on pretty thin grounds. It removes the threat, and it lets Erdogan look like he's tough on corruption. It's a clever, cynical move.
But despite all this control, he's not invincible electorally, is he? He lost big cities in the recent municipal elections.
And that's the crucial wrinkle why it stays semi-democratic. He might control the central state, the media, the courts, but at the local level, opposition can still organize and win. Losing Istanbul and Ankara, that was a major setback.
Shows vulnerability.
Definitely. There's a strong opposition current there. If they can get their act together, the next national elections in 2028, well, they could be genuinely competitive, even with the system tilted in his favor.
Okay, let's shift from the political balancing act to the economic one. Because Turkey seems like a place of real contrasts here, too. Strong in some ways, but struggling in others. What are the economic strengths?
Well, the foundation is pretty solid in places.
Hmm.
Agriculture is huge, especially in the southeast. World-class dried fruits, cheeses, honey, really good stuff. And they have a big manufacturing base, too, particularly cars and auto parts for export.
Okay, so there are real assets there, but they're overshadowed by this massive problem. Inflation, was it 33% annually? That's crippling.
Crippling is the word. And the really painful part. A lot of it was self-inflicted. It wasn't just global factors. It came directly from Erdogan's unconventional economic ideas.
He has this theory about interest rates, right?
Yeah.
That lowering them boosts growth, regardless of inflation.
Exactly. Completely against standard economic thinking. He basically forced the central bank to slash interest rates even as prices were soaring. He believed it would encourage people to borrow, buy homes, stimulate the economy.
And to make sure the central bank did what he wanted.
He put a relative in charge. Another son-in-law, a Yerno, was appointed to head the central bank to push through these policies.
Wow. Nepotism right at the heart of monetary policy.
It led to disaster. Floods of cheap money chasing too few goods. Prices went through the roof. The inflationary spiral we see now, it nearly brought down the government, a real crisis of confidence caused by ideology trumping economics.
That really highlights the personalization of power we talked about. Okay, let's switch gears completely now to the military. This seems to be Turkey's most reliable tool on the world stage, second biggest in NATO.
That size alone gives them immense leverage, especially with the West. But what's really changed, and what's maybe more important now, is the rise of their own domestic arms industry. They're not just buying weapons, they're making world-class ones.
And crucially, these weapons have been used. They're proven.
Battle-tested. That's the key difference. Unlike some rivals whose gear might look good on paper, Turkish drones, for example, have shown they work in real combat situations. That gives them a huge marketing edge and strategic credibility.
Yeah, the drones are the big success story. The Bayraktar drones.
Absolutely. They were game changers in the Azerbaijan-Armenia war. Turkey, along with Israel, backed Azerbaijan, and those Turkish drones were devastating against older Armenian air defenses, mostly Russian-made stuff.
A huge win for Turkish tech.
Yeah.
And let me guess, the drone company has family ties too.
Bingo. Managed by another one of Erdogan's sons-in-law. It really is a family affair when it comes to the key levers of power, financial, and military.
Remarkable consolidation. But even with this military strength, there's a big weakness, right? Energy.
The Achilles heel, they just don't have significant oil or gas reserves of their own.
So they have to import almost everything.
Pretty much. Heavy reliance on gas, mostly. About half comes from Russia, a lot of the rest from the U.S., LNG shipments. This dependence means they're constantly scrambling, making geopolitical moves to try and secure energy supplies.
And that search for energy fuels conflict.
Directly.
Yeah.
You see them getting involved in places like Libya, backing one side in the civil war there, hoping to get access to Libyan energy if their side wins. Or, even more aggressively, you see the clashes in the Mediterranean.
With Greece, Cyprus, Israel.
Yeah.
Over those potential gas fields.
Exactly. Sending naval vessels, making claims, challenging drilling rights. They desperately need those undersea gas deposits to reduce their reliance on Russia and the U.S. So the military muscle is being used, in part, to try and plug that big economic vulnerability.
Okay, this maneuvering really brings us to Turkey's big foreign policy ambitions. The analysis from Tenenbaum laid out three main directions they're trying to push, but they keep hitting roadblocks. What's the first area?
First is Central Asia. That idea of Turanism we mentioned, trying to create this cultural, linguistic, maybe economic bloc with the Turkic-speaking countries, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, etc. It's the soft power angle.
But they're not the only big player interested in that region.
Definitely not. Russia sees Central Asia as its traditional sphere of influence, its near abroad. Moscow is actively pushing back, using its own economic and security ties to keep those countries in its orbit. So Turkey's trying to chip away at that, but it's tough going against Russia there.
Okay, ambition number two. Trying to become the leader of the Sunni Islamic world. How's that going?
Not well. Mostly stalled, maybe even failed. They tried to claim leadership based on the Ottoman past and being, more modern than the Gulf states. But they slammed right into two huge rivals.
Saudi Arabia and Egypt.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia has the money, the influence, and crucially, control of Mecca and Medina, the holy sites. That gives them immense religious authority. And Egypt has Cairo, Al-Azhar University, deep cultural and religious institutions that Turkey just can't compete with.
And this is connected to the third factor, isn't it? Erdogan's links to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes, that's critical context. Erdogan is seen as ideologically aligned with, or maybe even a member of, the Muslim Brotherhood to the Brothers of Islam.
Which is controversial.
Hugely controversial. It's an expansionist, often seen as extremist organization, and it's banned and actively suppressed in places like Egypt and Saudi Arabia, who see it as a major threat. So Turkey's support for Brotherhood-linked groups elsewhere puts it directly at odds with Cairo and Riyadh.
This complex identity also shapes their relationship with Europe, especially the EU. That whole saga of trying to join.
And being rejected. Yeah, that still really stings. It's a grievance Erdogan uses very effectively at home. Leaders like Sarkozy in France were dead set against Turkey joining, mainly citing demographic fears about bringing such a large religious Muslim population into the EU bloc.
So even before Erdogan's more autocratic turn, the door was kind of closed.
Pretty much. And that rejection really cemented the feeling for many Turks that, they'd never truly be seen as European or fully accepted by the West.
And internally, this identity struggle connects to the long-running conflict with the Kurdish population.
Oh, the Kurdish issue is a constant factor. A huge population spread across Turkey, Syria, Iraq, with a decades-long insurgency demanding autonomy or independence from Ankara. It's a massive internal security problem.
But Erdogan seems to play it, use it politically.
He's incredibly tactical about it. He negotiates, or hints at negotiating, with imprisoned Kurdish leaders like Abdullah Öcalan when it suits him, maybe to peel off some Kurdish votes or to disrupt opposition alliances. It's less about solving the issue, more about managing it for political gain. Cynical, but effective for maintaining power.
Okay, let's look at how Turkey deals with the big global powers, starting with the U.S., specifically that relationship between Erdogan and Trump.
The source material described that as, surprisingly, very good. It seemed like a very personal, transactional chemistry between two leaders who bypassed a lot of the usual diplomatic channels and friction points.
Dealing leader to leader.
Exactly. Another example of Erdogan preferring those personal ties over more formal institutional relationships, even when national interests didn't perfectly align.
But with Israel, the public relationship is completely different. Very tense, right? Erdogan's rhetoric against Netanyahu, his support for Hamas.
Publicly, it's incredibly hostile. Erdogan positions himself as a champion of the Palestinian cause, condemns Israel fiercely, refuses to meet Netanyahu sometimes. It's very confrontational.
And this was a fascinating point in the Tenenbaum analysis. Behind the scenes, it's a different story.
Utterly different. This is where pure realpolitik kicks in. Despite the public animosity, the Turkish and Israeli intelligence agencies Mossad and MIT apparently have excellent ongoing operational cooperation.
Cooperating. While their leaders are trading insults.
Exactly. They share intelligence, work together against common threats. Why? Because, as the analysis put it, they have the same enemies. Iran-backed groups, ISIS remnants, other regional jihadists. Those threats override the political drama.
Pragmatism over ideology.
Pure pragmatism. Their shared security needs are just too important. It's a stunning example of how the public face of international relations can be completely divorced from the secret reality. And apparently, the Israelis see the current head of Turkish intelligence as a key figure in keeping that channel open, even post-Erdogan.
So Turkey, a complex, powerful, ambiguous player. The Tenenbaum analysis also touched on other global hotspots, painting a picture of, well, a pretty unstable world right now.
Yeah.
What's the latest on the Israel-Hamas hostage situation, according to that briefing?
Still very fragile. A key sticking point is the return of the bodies of hostages who died. Hamas was supposed to facilitate this, but they're claiming they can't find them in the rubble.
A delay tactic.
Seems likely, yeah. A way to stall, maybe extract more concessions. It's a grim part of the negotiation.
And Turkey's role in this?
Trying to stay involved, as usual. They've actually offered to help search the rubble for the bodies. It keeps them at the table. The analysis suggested Israel probably wouldn't collapse the whole deal just over the bodies, the practical difficulties, but it shows the strain. And there were hints Hamas might be using the ceasefire cover to settle scores with political rivals inside Gaza.
Grim. Okay, shifting to Russia, Ukraine, Zelensky's still pushing for more advanced weapons.
Yes, specifically U.S. Tomahawk missiles. He wants that long-range strike capability to hit targets deep inside Russia itself, a direct response to Russia's missile attacks on Ukrainian cities.
And Putin's playing diplomatic games, suggesting peace talks in Budapest.
Yeah, Budapest. It's a clever move, isn't it? Hungary is in the EU, but Orban is close to Putin. Holding talks there forces the EU to engage on somewhat favorable ground for Moscow, potentially highlighting EU divisions.
But the bigger theme connecting all this Russia, Hamas, Turkey seems to be this erosion of national sovereignty. Tenenbaum really hammered this point.
It's maybe the most worrying trend. That core idea of the post-World War II order, that borders are sacred, nations are sovereign within them, it seems to be crumbling fast.
We see examples everywhere.
All over. Israel hitting targets in Qatar, Russia openly saying they'll hunt dissidents anywhere, ignoring borders, the U.S. making threats against Venezuela. Major powers just seem less and less constrained by traditional sovereignty norms.
The shield is down.
It feels like it. When powerful states feel they can act militarily or covertly inside other countries with impunity, it fundamentally destabilizes everything. And it's not just states. The analysis mentioned how corporations like Microsoft sometimes have better credit ratings than governments now. Power is shifting in complex ways.
And just to add another layer of gloom, the analysis also touched on France's economy.
Well,
A stark contrast to that Italian tax cut we started with.
yeah, France seems to be in a tough spot, facing a serious debt crisis apparently driven by years of high spending. Fitch, the ratings agency, recently downgraded French debt down to the same level as Romania.
Ouch, same level as Romania. For France.
That's a serious red flag for a major G7 economy. The analysis pointed to things like the state guaranteeing housing for all foreign students, massive systemic costs adding up over time, alongside sluggish growth.
And a downgrade means borrowing gets more expensive.
Exactly. Higher interest rates on new debt. If you're already heavily indebted like France is, that just makes the problem worse. It creates this vicious cycle, harder and harder to escape.
Okay, let's bring it back to Turkey for the wrap-up. We've seen this picture of contradictions, fragile economy, strong military, autocratic tendencies, real opposition. What's the final takeaway on Turkey's place in the world?
I think the assessment is they are incredibly skilled players. Ruthless, pragmatic, sophisticated. Erdogan, for all his flaws, knows how to play the game. He uses the few strong cards Turkey has, things like Turkish Airlines becoming a huge global connector, that battle-proven arms industry to maximum effect.
Exploiting the gaps.
Exploiting every crack in the system. They operate based on pure national interest, pure transaction, like that secret cooperation with Israeli intelligence shows. They use their location, their ambiguity, brilliantly.
It really is a masterclass in leveraging geography. So we've seen Turkey, Russia, even the U.S. pushing the boundaries of national sovereignty.
Yeah.
If that core principle really does break down completely, if borders become suggestions rather than rules for the powerful, what does that world look like, especially for smaller countries? That feels like a big, unsettling question to leave everyone thinking about today.